you that after their interventions, there will be a round of questions. Could you please indicate your name and your media that you're representing before you put your questions when you take the floor? I'd now like to give the floor to the Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Álvarez. Good afternoon. And let me begin by thanking the Commissioner, Olivier Vallejo, for having travelled to Murcia along with all the other ministers from the member states of the European Union. We have just had our informal General Affairs Council meeting where we addressed two questions which will mark the immediate future of the European Union. Firstly, enlargement to new members, and secondly, open strategic autonomy. Enlargement is one of the major challenges that the Union is facing. The European Union is an area of democratic values, of solidarity, of prosperity. And new countries who share those values and principles with us want to join us. And we have to be prepared for enlargement. This was one of the themes that we discussed, therefore, today. We also addressed the geopolitical reality that we're faced with. There's the question of when, but also how. The EU is a community of values, and we have always been open to other EU countries who have gradually joined us because we share the same principles and values of the Union. That is why part of our work today was split into three working groups. One focused on the EU institutions and the necessary reforms in the light of enlargement. The other was on the impact on the budget, on the EU's absorption capacity, because we will have to adapt our policies and look at how we're going to finance these policies. And then thirdly, a discussion on gradual integration and the possibilities of creating new areas of cooperation. The second part of our meeting was focused on one of the major priorities of the Spanish presidency of the European Union, namely open strategic autonomy. We made it quite clear, the Spanish presidency has made it clear, that we're not trying to create a fortress here in Europe. We have always shown that openness to the outside world has always been beneficial to the European Union. But it is also true that the Europe of the 21st century, the strategic dependency that we have has also led to vulnerabilities, and we have to address those, ensuring the well-being of our citizens. As we are responsible for that, for the well-being of our citizens, we have to act in key sectors, namely food, health, energy, and digital sector. Our strategic autonomy will enable us to face also threats from third parties, as we've seen, for example, in the energy field. We will be able to take a more robust approach to addressing world crises. The document Resilient EU 2030 brings together some of those vulnerabilities that we've identified in the European Union, ones that we're going to have to address over the next 10 years. It also sets out various areas for action to strengthen our production capabilities, and this is something that was stressed during the course of our meeting. The General Affairs Council discussed the promotion of this new open strategic autonomy. We will support the open strategic autonomy and continue working on enlargement. Today, we made decisive progress to prepare the discussions at the highest level. This is going to be the most important meeting held in Spain under the Spanish presidency. And here I'm referring to the Granada Informal Summit, which will be held on the 6th of October, where these subjects will be discussed. We've made progress on the proposal that we want to discuss between the 27 member states on introducing Euskera, Galician and Catalan as official languages in the European Union. We announced to all the ministers that we will be including on the agenda for the next General Affairs Council a point that will specifically address this in order to find an answer this month to many of the questions that have been put to us by the Member States in this respect. And I would like to remind you the very specific, almost unique situation that the co-official languages have in Spain. They are enshrined in our constitution. They are used in the chambers, in the plenary, in the two houses. We have administrative agreements that have been in place for almost 20 years on these languages in the European Union. And I wanted to stress that there is a clear will on the part of all Member States to work together with Spain on this proposal.
Dear José Manuel, I'm very happy to be here today with you. And I want to thank the Spanish presidency for having the first serious, in-depth discussion on how we are going to deliver accession and how we're going to deliver new member states to the European Union. I think this was the main topic of the day. And when we talked about it, I think I could go on repeating the same old sentences, but now they are gaining traction, they are gaining meaning. That for the EU leaders, the enlargement is among the 3 top priorities. That the value of EU membership has never been higher than now. We have seen an immediate reaction, if you will, a reflex from 3 countries when this war of aggression of Russia broke out, that they consider their long-term peace, stability and prosperity to be best guaranteed by EU membership. It also means that Europe would also have to reflect on the value of EU membership. And this is why I'm very pleased that we are drawing the conclusions. And we are not only drawing the conclusions that we have to make enlargement happen, but we are now swinging to action. Swinging to action by creating the possibility for enlargement for the candidate countries, but also by launching our internal debate on how to deliver enlargement within the European Union. Because, as you have seen, this Commission has always been, from the very beginning of this mandate, consistently, credibly and reliably advocate for enlargement. And now, this change in the geopolitics around us demonstrates also to us that the long-term peace, stability and security of the European Union will largely depend on the success of enlargement and having and welcoming new members from our immediate neighborhood in the European Union. Of course, as it has been confirmed also today, enlargement continues to be a merit-based process. Merit-based meaning our candidate countries, our partners, also have to deliver on all the criteria to become a member. The criteria that is very well known since Copenhagen, a set of criteria that provides the credibility also for the membership. And this is why today we not only confirmed, but we have also started to discuss how we could support the candidate countries to speed up their delivery of the reforms. And we have started to look into ways that could accelerate the process. We have seen, the topics were mentioned by the Minister, we have seen very interesting debates about the institutional reforms, about gradual integration, and we have also seen the very specific actions we can make. You have seen that we are coming with a new enlargement package, which is imminent. In a couple of weeks' time, you will see us presenting a new way of thinking about enlargement. And a package that will now include 10 candidate countries, or countries with a European perspective. And in that report, we not only want to move forward, but we want to provide the mean for an accelerated integration. And that is going to be our growth plan for the Western Balkans, which should be based on 4 pillars. First, to push for and create the incentives for reinforce socio-economic reforms to enhance growth and through that accelerate the accession path of the region. Second, we want to create the opportunity to gradually integrate these countries already in the single market, in the 4 freedoms, if you will, already before accession, because this will be for the benefit of both the European Union and for the candidate countries. The third pillar of this work would be to strengthen also our work in relation to the reforms on the rule of law and democracy. Because, of course, the credibility of the process is instrumentalized by the notion of having the fundamentals at the core of the enlargement process. And fourth, we want to provide the necessary tools to close the economic and social gap well before accession through a reinforced contribution from Europe and financial contribution from Europe to speed up all the reform efforts that these countries are making. We are convinced that through this, we can put a new tool at our disposal, a new tool through which the European Union can demonstrate that it is ready to welcome new member states. It is ready to create the right conditions for welcoming new members. And now it is for the candidate countries to make full use of these opportunities. We have had the first debate on our internal discussions, whether there is a need of a full reform of our institutions, and if so, what should be our strategy. I think from today, the conclusion we draw as Commission is that there is no need for a treaty change to welcome new member states. It is also very clear that the internal debate can go hand in hand and in parallel with the accession process. We are convinced that the 2 processes can be managed in parallel, and we are convinced that both of these procedures should be concluded in the short term. One word maybe on the EU's open strategic autonomy. We have praised very much the report that we have seen from the Spanish presidency, the Resilient Europe 2030. And I think that we are in full sync when it comes to the priorities put forward by the presidency and by our own strategic foresight report. Because I think that we have agreed on the key priorities ahead of us, and ahead of us also in terms of the next strategic agenda for the European Union. It is also very clear that a lot of result has been achieved since the Versailles Declaration. We have also summarized it in our own communication. But this is not the time to sit on our laurels. We need to continue. We need to double our efforts to make Europe more resilient, more competitive, make it a more sustainable economy, and to make sure that our citizens will enjoy the social European market economy that we have created throughout Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varela. Vamos con las preguntas.
Right, let's begin with questions. Please just limit yourselves to question about the meeting itself.
Adelante, por favor. El micrófono, por favor.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, Sylvia. I work for Europe Press. I have a question for the Minister and another question for the Commissioner. Shall I ask them both at the same time? Yes, good, fine. For the Minister, how do you assess the recent developments in Nagorno-Karabakh with the exodus of citizens towards Armenia? Yesterday, Spain decided to provide assistance under international cooperation. Would you care to comment, Minister, what kind of assistance is going to be provided? And Commissioner, from you, are you already thinking about a date? It might be a bit too early, I know. You haven't had all the preparatory meetings yet, but any idea of the date of the accession for the candidate countries, even though I know some are closer than others?
Muchas gracias. En relación.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, in relation to the awful situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, Spain will be making an initial provision of 1 million euros in humanitarian aid in order to deal with the situation of the Armenian population that are unjustly having to flee their homes. Today, we also decided on an additional contribution through the Red Cross. The Spanish humanitarian aid, especially via the European Cooperation Agency, is already providing help to the displaced populations. Thanks to the conventions we have with Caritas, we will also be providing support to 4,000 families. And of course, we will be following very closely the humanitarian needs that arise, this in cooperation with our multilateral partners, in particular the UN and the Red Cross. Over and above the Spanish humanitarian aid that is already out there being deployed, that I've just mentioned, what is absolutely vital is that we should guarantee the rights of the Armenian people who are at the moment having to flee. This is a massive exodus. It's very worrying, and I'm very alarmed by it, as is the Spanish government. And I think it is absolutely vital that humanitarian aid that Spain and other countries are providing should be able to transit freely and reach the affected population. Of course, as I said, we will be very vigilant and monitor what is happening to the Armenian population that is having to abandon Nagorno-Karabakh.
Well, this is a recurring question that you have put about the date. For the time being, I think what is very important is to put all the tools in place to make enlargement happen. So the Commission is now concentrating on how to deliver on the requests made today, like putting gradual integration on the table to accelerate the way to membership. And this is what we are working on. But there is a message out in the open from the President of the European Council, who is convinced that the Council, who is the decision-making body, should be ready to deliver membership, new members to the European Union by 2030. So if the Council is ready, the Commission is going to be ready for sure. But this is not the real question, I think. The real question is, are the candidate countries going to be ready by 2030? We're working for that, to help the Council to be ready and also for the candidate countries to be ready.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Any further questions?
Sí. Bien.
Yes. I'm from La Siete. My name is Mr. Martinez. I've got two questions, one for the Minister, one for the Commissioner. Minister, I'd like to ask you about the amnesty law that is coming from the Catalans, the independentists, and the situation with regard to the EU on this, because there are some conflicting rulings and there are various different initiatives at EU level that seem to run against that. Commissioner, on the enlargement to new countries, how will this affect the distribution of cohesion funds? If you look at what is currently given to existing member states and what would happen to particular regions such as the region of Murcia. In answer, I would like to really stress that we just stick to issues that have been addressed here at the General Affairs Council. I think out of respect to the Commissioner, I don't want to address issues that weren't raised at the meeting. Commissioner.
Well, on the cohesion funds, this is, of course, a sensitive question. And, of course, we would want to welcome new member states and candidate countries as new member states with the support of all the member states. Because, as you know, these decisions are made unanimously. These decisions are strategic ones. But I do not see a conflict of interest between the cohesion member states or the candidate countries. The very proposal that we are preparing will answer this question, because we think that if Europe wants to think and act geopolitical, it has to put the means at its disposal. So our proposal would not be on the expense of the cohesion funds or the structural funds, but rather to put additional means. And this is already part and parcel of the MFF review that we have proposed. So I think it is only natural that we should all support the candidate countries. And in that, of course, we are counting on the support of regions like Murcia.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Any further questions?
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Virginia Vadillo de la agencia.
Thank you. From Agency EFE. Commissioner, could you say something more about, sorry, the Minister, could you say something about the co-official languages? Have you had any feedback on this request in the meeting? What are the perspectives for this? What are the main sticking points for this request of Spain to be accepted by the EU?
Muchas gracias.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, this is a General Affairs Council meeting that we had where we all managed to talk together about the future of Europe, enlargement, open strategic autonomy. So the future of Europe, as Article 3 of the treaty says, is also the future of its multilingualism. Because this was a commitment made by the Spanish government to push forward to include Catalan, Basque and Galician in the EU language arrangements. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to try and make some progress on this. As I said, it's a Spanish government commitment. And today, as I saw on the 19th, that all member states are happy to work with Spain along these lines. And we'd said that on the 24th of October, there will be a point raised on this matter.
I'm from the Opinión de Murcia. We've been told that within the EU there is some resistance or hesitancy with regard to the inclusion of these languages. Is this really feasible? And then what sort of time frame would we be talking about? Because, of course, you would need to consolidate that inclusion. Well, I'd like to thank all the citizens of Murcia for the wonderful welcome that this council has had here. And all the eyes of Europe are looking to Murcia today. And we do apologise for all of the disturbances because of all the delegations present here. But I think that this has really put Murcia on the European map. And I think it's increased everyone's awareness of what Murcia can offer. Now, no member state took the floor to raise any particular issue of concern, but on the 19th at the General Affairs Council, when I raised this for the first time, nobody actually spoke out against. So we're just continuing to work on this. This is in line with the commitment of the Spanish government. We're going to continue to work on this to see how we can accommodate any comments from member states ahead of that meeting on the 24th of October, and then we'll take it forward from there. Thank you very much.